The letter arrived on a rainy afternoon, its parchment damp, but still crisp with an unsettling neatness. I didn't recall applying for a position as a nanny, yet the details were unnervingly precise. My name, my address, my experience working with children. The message was short, written in an elegant, looping script. Miss Elise Marlowe, we are in need of a caretaker for 2 exceptional children at Ravenswood Manor. The pay is generous, and your expertise is exactly what we require. If you accept, transportation will arrive at your address tomorrow at dusk. Trust that your presence is already awaited. There was no signature, just a faint imprint of an emblem, a crow surrounded by intricate vines that left an odd impression of something watching. I couldn't explain why I felt compelled to go, only that something about the words whispered to a part of me that yearned for change, for purpose. When the carriage arrived, a vintage black car gleaming against the rain, I hesitated. The driver didn't speak, only nodded, his face obscured by the brim of a wide hat. As we passed through the winding countryside, the rain thickened, the world outside the window blurring into gray. With every turn, the forest closed in tighter, the skeletal branches tapping against the car like impatient fingers. Then, Ravenswood Manor appeared. It rose from the mist like a relic of another world, its turrets clawing at the sky. Ivy crawled up its stone walls, and narrow, slitted windows seemed to peer down at me, scrutinizing my arrival. A great iron gate creaked open of its own accord as the car approached, and the driver stopped without a word, leaving me to gather my courage and step out alone. The door to the manor swung open before I could knock, revealing a housekeeper dressed in black with a pale, unsmiling face. "Miss Marlowe," she said, her voice clipped. "We've been expecting you." The interior of Ravenswood was as somber as its exterior. The grand foyer was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows. Portraits of solemn-faced ancestors lined the walls, their eyes following me as I moved. The air smelled faintly of lavender and something metallic, like rust. "The children are upstairs," the housekeeper said, gesturing toward a staircase that spiraled into darkness. "They've been eagerly awaiting you." I followed her up, the wooden steps groaning beneath my weight. At the top, the hallway stretched endlessly in both directions, lined with closed doors that seemed to hum faintly as we passed. The housekeeper stopped at a door at the far end, her hand hovering over the handle. "Miss Marlowe," she said again, her gaze steady but unreadable. "Be kind to them." The door opened to reveal 2 children sitting by a grand window. The boy, no older than 9, had pale blonde hair and a sharp, angular face that seemed too serious for his age. The girl, younger, clutched a stuffed rabbit to her chest, her wide eyes fixed on me as if searching for something only she could see. "You've come," the boy said simply. His voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made me shiver. The first night at Ravenswood was an unrelenting tangle of unease. After meeting the children, Miles, the quiet, observant boy, and his sister Alice, who spoke only in whispers, I was left alone in my room. The housekeeper had shown me to it with a muttered warning to keep to the main corridors. Her words, coupled with the strange weight of the air, were enough to set my nerves on edge. The room was modest compared to the rest of the manor, but even here I felt the house's oppressive presence. The wallpaper was faded, curling at the edges, and the furniture seemed chosen more for utility than comfort. The single window offered a view of the sprawling forest, its shadows twisting in the moonlight like restless spirits. As I unpacked, I thought about the children. Miles had spoken with the unnerving calm of someone far older, while Alice had simply stared at me, clutching her rabbit as if it were a shield. Neither had shown the warmth I'd come to expect from children. Their eyes carried a weight of something unseen, as though they knew things no one should. I tried to sleep, but the house wouldn't let me. At first, it was subtle, the faint creak of floorboards, the distant hum of something too rhythmic to be the wind. I told myself it was an old house, full of quirks and sounds born of age. But then I heard it. A whisper. It was soft at first, like the wind brushing against the glass, but it grew louder, distinct words forming. I couldn't make them out, but they filled the room, pressing against my skull like static. I sat up, heart pounding, and scanned the darkness. Nothing moved, yet the air felt alive, trembling with something unseen. I threw on a robe and opened the door, stepping into the hallway. It was empty, but the whispers persisted, retreating farther into the house as though they were leading me. Against my better judgment, I followed. The whispers led me to the east wing, to a door that was slightly ajar. The room beyond was a library, its shelves towering and crammed with books bound in leather and gold. A single lamp burned on a desk, casting long shadows. As I stepped inside, the whispers stopped. On the desk lay an open book, its pages yellowed with age. I approached, drawn to it despite the cold dread curling in my stomach. The writing was faint and slanted, the ink smudged in places, but one phrase stood out, etched deep into the page. "They are not alone." Behind me, the door creaked shut. The words on the page, "They are not alone," clung to me like frost. My breath quickened, my eyes darting across the dimly lit library, searching for a presence I couldn't see. The oppressive silence that followed the whispers was heavier than any sound. It wasn't just quiet. It was an absence, a void pressing in around me. Something compelled me to stay. My rational mind begged me to turn and leave the room, to retreat to the safety of my bed and forget this night. But curiosity, that reckless, treacherous instinct, rooted me in place. I reached for the book, the rough leather cool beneath my fingers. It was untitled, its cover worn smooth by countless hands. Flipping the pages revealed scrawled notes, diary entries perhaps, all written in the same rushed, trembling hand. October 4th. They said the house was empty, but I hear them at night. The children claim they don't notice, but I see it in their eyes. They know. October 11th. I've tried keeping to myself, but the walls whisper when I am alone. They speak of things that shouldn't be. October 31st. The children are different now. They smile, but it doesn't reach their eyes. I dream of shadows in the attic. I will not go there, no matter how the house calls me. I stopped, my hand trembling as I turned the page. A single phrase was scrawled across the next entry, so deep the pen had torn through the paper. The house never forgets. A chill swept through the room, though the air had already been cold. My gaze flicked toward the dark corners of the library, the faint flicker of the lamp casting strange, shifting shapes. Was it my imagination, or did they move against the light? A soft sound broke the silence, barely a whisper, more like a sigh. It came from the far side of the library, where an old armchair sat bathed in shadow. The chair was empty, but the air around it shimmered faintly, as though disturbed. I backed away slowly, clutching the diary to my chest. My steps were careful, but the floor beneath me betrayed every creak and groan. The moment I reached the door, it opened on its own with a soft click, as though inviting me to leave. I didn't hesitate. Back in my room, I locked the door, sliding a chair under the handle for good measure. The book lay on the desk by the window, its presence unsettling. Sleep didn't come easily, and when it did, it was fitful and haunted by dreams of hollow eyes and darkened attics. The next morning, Miles and Alice seemed unchanged. They greeted me at breakfast with their usual eerie calm, though Miles watched me with a knowing glint in his eye. "You're starting to see, aren't you?" he said softly, his fork hovering over his plate. See what? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. He only smiled, a fleeting, cryptic expression. The house remembers. By the second week, the house was no longer hiding its secrets. Whispers drifted through the hallways even during the day, faint but insistent, like forgotten conversations lingering in the air. Shadows danced where no light touched, stretching unnaturally long and curling around corners as if alive. I kept the diary close, poring over its pages each night, hoping to uncover some logic in its madness. The entries grew more fragmented, more desperate. November 6th. The house plays tricks. It hides things I know I left in plain sight. Doors lead to nowhere. The children's laughter echoes even when they are not there. November 14th. The attic is locked, but I feel it watching me. Something stirs above. November 20th. The house wants something. I don't know what, but I fear it will take me before I understand. The attic. That single word gnawed at my mind. I'd avoided that part of the house as the previous nanny had warned in her writing, but the whispers always seemed to drift from above, as if they were calling me. It was Alice who broke my resolve. "Do you want to play?" she asked one afternoon, her voice as soft as her footsteps. I looked up from the diary, startled. "Play what?" "A game," she said, her expression unreadable. She clutched her rabbit tightly, her fingers white against its worn fur. "It's the house's favorite." Something in her tone sent a shiver down my spine, but I forced a smile. "What kind of game?" "You'll see." She turned and walked away, and despite every instinct screaming at me to stay put, I followed her. Miles joined us in the hallway, his calm demeanor now tinged with an unsettling excitement. Together, the children led me up the staircase, higher than I'd ever ventured in the manor. The air grew colder with each step, and the whispers grew louder, like a crowd gathering in anticipation. At the top of the stairs was a door, ornate and weathered, with an iron handle that gleamed faintly. The attic. Miles opened the door without hesitation, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling into darkness. The whispers seemed to beckon from above, urging us upward. Alice went first, then Miles, leaving me no choice but to follow. The attic was a cavernous space, its high ceiling lost in shadows. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling in the pale light streaming through a single circular window. At the center of the room was a circle of objects, a broken doll, a tarnished mirror, a bundle of withered flowers. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the whispers. Miles stepped into the circle, his face solemn. "The house likes to play. If you win, you'll understand. If you lose..." He didn't finish. Alice looked at me, her wide eyes glistening in the dim light. "Are you ready?" Before I could answer, the attic door slammed shut behind me. The attic door's slam reverberated through the cavernous space, sealing me in with the children and the house's looming presence. The air grew heavier, tinged with an earthy scent of decay that clung to my skin. Every breath felt labored, as though the atmosphere itself resisted my presence. Alice and Miles stood in the circle, their faces illuminated by the weak, bluish light filtering through the dusty window. The objects around them, innocuous at first glance, seemed to hum faintly, vibrating with a sinister energy. My heart pounded as I edged closer, unable to shake the feeling that the attic was alive, watching, waiting. "What do I have to do?" I asked, my voice trembling. Miles tilted his head, a faint smirk curling his lips. "The house wants to see if you can find the truth." "What truth?" "The truth it keeps," Alice said softly. Her voice, barely louder than the whispers swirling around us, carried an eerie finality. "You only have until the last chime." Chime. As if on cue, a distant low bong echoed through the house, the sound rattling the attic floorboards beneath my feet. I turned instinctively, scanning the room for its source, but there was nothing, just the endless dark pressing in from every corner. "What happens if I don't find it?" I asked. Alice's gaze darkened, her fingers tightening around her rabbit. "The house will decide." The unspoken threat coiled around me like smoke. Another chime rang out, louder this time, reverberating through my chest. I moved to the circle, kneeling among the scattered objects. The doll's porcelain face was cracked, its glassy eyes glinting faintly. The mirror was tarnished, its surface rippling unnaturally, as though it hid something beneath. The flowers, once vibrant, were now skeletal, their petals brittle to the touch. "What am I looking for?" I whispered, but the children didn't answer. Their expressions had shifted, expectant, detached, as if they were no longer part of this world. The whispers swelled, and the chime rang again. My hands hovered over the mirror, drawn to its warped surface. The faint reflection it offered wasn't mine, at least not entirely. The face staring back at me was older, gaunt, its eyes sunken and hollow. A chill coursed through me, and I pulled back, my breath hitching. "It's in the attic," a voice murmured, distinct amidst the cacophony. It was soft, yet insistent, its source impossible to pinpoint. I glanced around, the attic's shadows seeming to shift and pulse, pulling me toward the far wall. There, half hidden beneath a tattered sheet, was an old steamer trunk. The chime rang again, louder, more urgent. I scrambled toward the trunk, the whispers growing in intensity, as if urging me on. My fingers trembled as I lifted the sheet, revealing the trunk's worn leather surface. Its brass latch gleamed faintly, untouched by the dust that covered everything else. I hesitated. The chime rang once more, and this time the attic seemed to shudder, the very air vibrating with a low, resonant hum. I couldn't wait any longer. My hands closed over the latch, and with a sharp click, the trunk opened. Inside was a journal, its leather cover cracked with age. I opened it, my eyes scanning the cramped handwriting. "The house holds us. It feeds on what we leave behind, our fears, our memories. It offers no escape, only choices, to stay or to surrender." The words blurred as a cold gust swept through the attic, extinguishing the faint light. Panic surged, but before I could move, the whispers coalesced into a single deafening voice. "Choose." I turned back to the children, their forms now dim shadows against the encroaching darkness. Alice's voice cut through the void, steady and sorrowful. "If you stay, you'll become part of it. If you leave, you must take us with you." "Take you." My voice wavered. Miles stepped forward, his face pale and luminous in the dim light that returned with agonizing slowness. "We can't leave on our own. The house won't let us. But if you carry us..." The attic shook violently, and the whispers erupted into a storm of voices. My heart raced as the final chime echoed, a sound so powerful it felt like the house itself was breaking apart. "Decide!" Alice cried, her wide eyes filled with desperation. I clutched the journal to my chest, its weight oddly comforting. My decision was instinctive, born of the overwhelming need to escape the house's suffocating grip. "I'll take you," I said, my voice barely audible. The children's faces softened, and for a brief moment, they looked almost human, their eyes glistening with hope. The attic fell silent, the oppressive weight lifting as the shadows receded. When I stepped out of the house the next morning, the children were gone, yet their absence felt like a presence of its own. Subtle, quiet, but unmistakable. As the manor loomed behind me, its windows dark and lifeless, I realized the whispers had followed.